Okay, let's get started. Next Friday, critique night. You're limited to 3 photos. Email them to info@clevelandphoto.org. Put critique in the subject line of the email. No judging. Richard will put the photos on up and make comments as to how maybe you might improve your photos. November 22nd, creative competition. This is a print competition. Vicki Wirt is going to talk about intro to macro photography while the judges are doing their thing in the back room. November 29th, How to Shoot in Hard Light by Scott Robert Lim. December 6th, How and Why I Process My Images, Confessions of a Digital Manipulator, Steve Ziegler. This is intriguing. I have no idea what that's about. I'm sure it will be very interesting. Dennis Wirt's photo matte cutting classes continue. November 19th, December 3rd, and December 17th, there are more sessions. This is a really great deal. He will teach you how to cut mats, and you can even do custom mats. But for $3, you can cut your own mats, a single mat, or for $5, you can cut a double mat. It's on the honor system. There will be an envelope left in the back. But any evening, after you take the class, any evening that the clubhouse is open, or on the weekend or something, you can come on in and cut your mats. The only nights that you can't, I think, are like a board night, and when there's a print competition, because we're using the back room for judging. I'm going to have a history lesson tonight. The club has been in like 13 or 14 different locations over its 130-year-odd history. They started out, the first club site was 18th Euclid Avenue at First President's, Dr. Dayton's office, First Vice President Dr. Dayton's office. There were 20 members. They moved from there to the Caxton building. The club was on the 8th floor of the Horace Cars Printing Company. There were 58 members and 11 honorary members. The Caxton building, let me get my little sheet here, because there's some additional. Pardon? Oops, thank you. No, I can't read. In the Caxton building, the office was in, what was his name? Horace Carr. He was had a printing company, and they met there in his space. Equipment and supplies had been purchased by several members and charged to the club. When the day of reckoning came, Horace Carr, as a member of the club and proprietor of the place where met, was sued for the past due bills, and he finally paid them, but at the same time made a solemn vow, never again will I become a member of the organization which is not incorporated. From there they moved to Horace Carr sued for past due bills from the members, charging equipment and supplies. The club ended up moving and meeting in 2 places, East 4th Street in the Cuyahoga building. In the Cuyahoga building, they had a dark room upstairs, and somebody left some paper that was blocking a drain and flooded the downstairs. And the downstairs, Jay Mintz was a detective whose office was down there. The Camera Club was in its 25th year. Jake, the detective, ended up suing them, and because of that, the Cleveland Photographic Society was formed. Prior to that, the name of the club was the Cleveland Camera Club, but there was a big argument about it. They thought that if they changed the name to the Cleveland Photographic Society, they would no longer be legally bound by their debts. There was a big argument. The officers voted against it. They left the club, and eventually they came back and rejoined the club many, many years later. But that's how we became the Cleveland Photographic Society, in order to not pay our bills. From there, the club met at the home of Dr. Van Tess and A.D. Williams. When equipment was required, they met at the first Ernst Eidman studio on East 7th Street. And from there, the club moved to 416th West Superior Street. Okay, well, while all of this was going, they moved to a building called the, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, they moved to 416th West Superior Street, and then it was World War II, and prices went up. Many members were drafted. They moved to a rooming house near Huron Road and East 12th Street and had about 20 members. The rooming house raised the rent to $75 per month with 20 members. At $2 per month, they had to leave. Rent, $75 per month. We're paying about $1,400 per month. They had to leave. They met at George Tang's tea room. Their dark room equipment and stairs were stored in a vacant house. CPS was incorporated in 1920, and they moved to a building called the Towers at 6106 Euclid Avenue. And this was the one I was looking for. This is the one that's kind of unique. The Towers. Club members on the way upstairs to the Towers one evening were stopped by a police officer. And the police officer asked them where they were going. And they said, well, we're going to the Camera Club. And he said, that's what they all say. And here what was going on was there were some ladies of the evening that were meeting in that building. The neighborhood was deteriorating, and they told their clients to say they were going to the Camera Club. Needless to say, after that, they started looking for someplace else to move. Then they moved a bunch of other places, Rascaler Building, 4th Street. Then they moved across the street to the Graves Building, 2007 East 4th Street. The club was $1,500 in debt, so they moved to less expensive quarters back at the Caxton Building again. They went back there. Then they moved to the Museum of Natural History because the landlord at the Caxton raised the rent. So like us today, we're always concerned about money. They were always concerned about money. In 1948, they received a letter from the museum director saying they had to vacate as soon as possible. In March, they moved to 1296 West 6th Street. They stayed there for 34 years. That's the longest time they were ever in one place. Prior to that, it's 6 years, 2 years, a year. They were wherever they were at. Then in 1983, Bert Klein and Joey Venko volunteered to look for a new location. They moved to 1549 Superior Avenue. And then finally in 2005, we moved to this facility here. And next year we'll have been here 25 years, the second longest stint that the club has been in one place. And with that, I am finished. And we will start the bee competition.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marge Brady, chairperson of the bee competitions. Thank you for coming to our third bee competition of the competition year. We had 36 entries in this projection competition, which is really awesome. And our three judges tonight are Chris Bosworth and Richard Ader, both of which probably need no introduction, but can say something if they wish. Our third judge is Jackie Sieski, who could not be here tonight, but she has been a longtime member with many photos selected as photo of the year, and she's been the photographer of the year for 2 sequential years. So good luck to everybody.
So I will say something opening up, and that is, this is very subjective when we look at images. You probably figured out judges can be subjective. We try to be gentle but honest, and my hope is to get out of here in one piece. Okay, this image has some good points and other aspects that leave me feeling a little conflicted. While normally the brightest areas grab our attention first, here I was drawn to the sparrow because there is an abundance of light areas. The sparrow holds my attention because of its contrasting darkness. I like the way the vegetation flows diagonally in the image. The sparrow is tack sharp. The image feels like an attempt to create a high-key image, but the sparrow conflicts with that. I would like to see this with the vegetation darkened down to complement the sparrow.
This photo is Bird in the Third by George Klepitz, 20 points. All right. Jackie says, you actually made the historic Coast Guard station look like it's some romantic tropical location. I think this is beautifully captured and rendered, keeping things very natural looking and letting the natural light paint warm hues and soft shadows on the structure. You made the right decision composing the top 2/3 of your image, the sky. It has a lot of interest and depth. Your smooth water is lovely, but not necessary to show any more than you did. Perhaps one of the most important segments to make this image work is your perfectly level horizon. And this is Coast Guard Building at Dusk by Jordan Tetzel, 24 points, 3rd place.
This image this is difficult. This is a very difficult subject to do because you have such shadows and bright lights as well. The grapes, which are your subject, though, are mostly in shadow. And there's not an easy way to handle this other than recognizing this and either trying to get some more light on the bottom. Even in post-processing, if you were to lighten up the shadows somewhat as well, there are grapes over on the right side of the picture too. So to find something that's really a central thing to look at is difficult. So I would try to concentrate on just a few of the grapes and isolate them, and try not to have the image as busy as it is.
This is Concord Harvest by Kate Hilliard, 18 points.
This is a very nice black and white image. It has a presence about it that makes me feel like I've been here before. The farmer is someone I used to buy vegetables from, or maybe he's a grandpa living on a generation's family farm. This could be two images. One is a portrait of the farmer, while the other is a cropped farmland. But as it stands, I like that the farm portion gives context to the farmer. The building divides the image into thirds. I would suggest a couple of small changes. The right-hand third of the image lacks the contrast that the left-hand side does. I would darken it a little and add some contrast. The left side of the image in darkness doesn't add anything, so I would crop some of that off. You could crop close to the farmer's arm or even crop off some of the arm. Finally, his forehead is overexposed. This is a difficult lighting shooting situation in which you have bright sunlight and also shadows. I would try to see if you can't lower the highlights to bring back some detail in the forehead.
The title is Dave in Barn Doorway by Ann Williams, 23 points, honorable mention. Okay, so Jackie says, your model is sure looking the part in this vintage car with this ascot cap and leather jacket and gloves. Your subjects are really great here. Unfortunately, the harsh light behind him, also lighting the contents inside of the garage, create just too much visual impact and takes away from your story. Extreme brightness against the gentleman's shadowed skin tones have created some purple fringing down his facial profile. The lens just can't converge all the colors upon the same point in high contrast situation, rendering purple or sometimes red chromatic aberration. There are tools in Lightroom in the lens corrections area that this may be able to correct that fairly easily. I hope you might try this again when the sun isn't so bright. With the right lighting conditions, this would make a wonderful image. And the title is Dave in Model A by Ann Williams, 20 points.
I thought this image was an excellent image. It projects better on the side monitors or at home rather than the front one. It's actually a great image from several points of view. One, the leading lines, these diagonals that just go right across there. The other is the perfect timing of the subway. And this is a difficult lighting situation as well, and I think it's all done well. Having the subway right there at that time, the leading lines the way they are, I think this is an excellent picture both composition-wise and technically.
And the title is Evening at the City by Natalie Souza, 25 points, second place.
Pets always make interesting subjects, but not always cooperative ones. I can't tell if this cat is yawning or snarling, but it looks ferocious to me. The problem here is that there does not appear to be anything tack sharp. Usually that means that the camera has misfocused or there was subject movement. The closest area to being sharp is around the cat's right eye, but even that looks a little soft.
And the title is Half-Fanged Yell by Victoria Young, 19 points. And Jackie says, perhaps a romantic symbol a couple have left behind. Its sweet shape and size hanging on the piece of twine does make me pause and wonder what the story is. The maker did a nice job with aperture selection. The shallow depth of field and strong textures in your elements keep me engaged. The simplicity and sparseness to your image conveys a sense of order and peacefulness. Strong shapes with the triangles and hearts and the diagonal rail add a dynamic element. I do feel it is important to show the end of the twine. Was it tied to a nail, perhaps? Visually, I feel that end is important to include. And this is Heartstring by Laura Eisenberg, 22 points.
I thought this was an excellent capture for a number of reasons. Composition-wise, it is just perfect. The man and the city are both kind of in the rule of thirds. They're not in the center. The sunrise, timing-wise, the sunset is just captured at the right time as well. The clouds are beautiful in the picture, and this was also a technically difficult one to take lighting wise as well. But I think the photographer nailed it on all of these. So there's not much I'd really change on this image at all, which is interesting to say. Usually I'm looking for something where we could say I would change this or change that, but this is just a very nice image, both compositionally and technically. I like it.
And the title is Huntington Sunrise by George Klepitz, 26 points, first place.
This is a good capture of Brandywine Falls. The image is fairly well exposed. It appears that there may be small areas of flowing water that are blown out, losing detail. The problem with presenting a good image of this falls is that there isn't a good access point to shoot from that doesn't have distractions, such as the road at the top seen here. Even Google's many videos of the images of the falls leave much to be desired. Showing majesty of the falls without a drone or video is next to impossible. One technique you could use on this image is to lightly burn in the corners to draw more attention to the falls.
And this is Life is Moving Fast by Dan Wanhanen, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, 21 points. Jackie says, what a wonderful find of this little critter. It looks to be a mink. I believe this little one is your subject, but there is so much in the image my eyes aren't really staying with it. I feel this would have much more impact with a severe crop. Consider cropping the left side and the top half. You would be eliminating the bright rock areas that are not adding anything to the story. I would also clone or crop out that right edge where the blade of green grass is. Little things that clutter the edges are just distractions. A simple rule to consider is if it doesn't add to the story, try to eliminate it. I do think how he is nestled in the little rocky cave and the moss and water would be enough to tell of his habitat and really focus on this cute little character. And the title is Little Sneak by Melanie Thompson, 22 points.
I thought this was a very interesting picture, and I know what they were trying to do. But the problem is in this is when it first gets put up on the screen, your eye just doesn't know where to go. There's no one central point. The two people on the right and the one on the left, your eye can't go to both sides simultaneously. So you wind up looking at the right side of the picture, then going over to the left side, and it loses that impact of all three. You kind of have to strain to see all three at once. I think when this first comes up, too, your eye is drawn right to those corn stalks in the middle where I don't think you want them. So this is a great idea, but I think the panorama or that kind of crop doesn't work. And if anything, the two items of interest in this photograph, which are the two people on the right and the one on the left, are separated by so much space that it makes it difficult. So I would, if we were going to look at the ones on the right, crop out the left to some degree as well. But I think, again, having the items of interest so far apart on the end of this makes this difficult compositionally.
And the title is Lost in the Corn Maze by Melanie Thompson, 22 points.
So many vehicles, including this tractor, seem to have faces. I like that you saw this face. I'm not sure, but I think it's some kind of mechanical bug related to a praying mantis. The image is well exposed with good contrast. I would maybe have shot with a greater depth of field to bring the tires into sharp focus. Their diagonal tread presents an interesting interaction with the horizontal lines of the face.
The title of this is Otis by Laura Eisenberg, 19 points. And Jackie says, very strong vertical elements here help to create a lot of impact. There's a lot in the scene, but I don't find that overpowering. I see the bike rider with the pink helmet as your key subject, and my eyes are then pulled up to the clock tower. One suggestion I might try would be to crop the left side of the image a bit, just at the motorcyclist. Because he's on the edge and partially cut off, I think it's just a distraction. Nice job keeping the vertical lines in perspective. And this is Philadelphia City Hall by Natalia Sousa, 23 points, honorable mention.
I felt this was a good capture, but I am not sure, when I was looking at this closely, if this was from a phone or that the focus was off a little and taken with a regular camera. Another possibility was that this was a very large crop. Now, it's hard to see from our distance here, but when you look at this closely on the screen, everyone's face is a little pixelated and out of focus again. So it could be any one from a number of those things. If this was a regular camera, though, if it was a very, very large crop, and sometimes if your camera doesn't have enough megapixels, when you crop a very large amount, you can get lots of little artifacts. The other is that if it was not a large crop and it was a regular camera, then concentrating on shutter speed or just technique to get a really sharp photo, because I couldn't find an area that was truly sharp in this. Sometimes a phone picture will create that same amount. The other thing compositionally is I think it's fine that the bull has room in front of his nose to the left side of the picture there as well, and that's the direction he's pointed in. But the right side is his foot is up against the crop a little too much. You'd like another ½ inch on the right there, not as much as on the left, but you want a little bit more on that side. Now, sometimes when you're working fast, this is just what you get, and you don't have time to sit there and look at the crop. This would be very easily taken care of post-processing. With artificial intelligence, you could expand the right side of that canvas out a ½ inch, and they will just, the AI will draw the parts of the stand and dirt that should be there, and compositionally, it would just look a lot more pleasing.
The title is Rodeo Night in Ohio by Andrew Garoy, 24 points, third place.
I really like this image and would love to see this place. The image raises a hard question. What could have happened to those old rusted bicycles are neatly positioned in a bike rack as if they are waiting for their riders who never returned? The mechanical bicycles are contrasted with the forested rural environment. The overall exposure is good. The late afternoon sun adds depth to the image. There's an almost idyllic feel to the right-hand side of the image. I would darken the lower left side of the image that is considerably brighter than the right. I would also gently darken the distant field and the small light area at the middle of the right edge of the image. These light areas are a little distracting and draw attention away from the subject. Very nice capture.
And this is entitled Rust and Gold by Shannon Kelly, 23 points, honorable mention. Jackie says, One of the more creative images. Your use of the contrasting colors creates some immediate impact. This image certainly makes me think, what story are you trying to tell? It's a compelling image, but I think there are some things that could make it stronger. If you add another view of her face above the other shoulder, it would produce a more dynamic balance. There would then be something in the middle surrounded by another on each side, giving it a better visual anchor. I'm not sure what the blue fabric behind your model is. Since I can't really make out what it is, it becomes very distracting. Removing it by cloning or content-aware fill, if these options are available to you, would be one way to address it. If that clothing is important to you to keep in the image, perhaps consider burning the highlights so it's more inconspicuous. I would love to know your title on this. I commend you on your creativity and challenging piece. And this is entitled Seeing Double by Victoria Young, 20 points.
I thought this was technically well done. And the thing here, again, is the main subject, obviously, is the leaf. I like it. I like everything in it, but there's a bit too busy with the other things. I'd like to isolate more on the leaf. Now, there are two ways that you could do this. One is you could crop in about 1 inch on all sides, and that would still give you the leaf with things around it, but you'd be eliminating some extraneous material and the leaf would be more prominent. The other thing is to, if you kept this crop, is to do, this is an ideal thing for a subtle vignette around it, which would draw your eye towards the center and just away from those other leaves. I would also, to bring my eyes more to this leaf, the leaf that's in the 7 o'clock position below it is a bit brighter than the main subject too. And so your eye tends to go to the brighter areas. So with that leaf and the leaf at the 12 o'clock position, I would just in post, just burn those down a little so that they're there, but just not as bright. And that would bring your leaf out more. And then I would perhaps also in post, just brighten a tiny bit or bring up the reds on that leaf in the middle. So basically your eyes would be drawn right to the leaf and not anywhere else. But I think a well-done picture in just recognizing this.
This is Signs of Fall by Christine Mudra, 20 points.
Black and white images can be difficult to properly expose. The maker of this image has done an excellent job of presenting us with deep blacks and bright whites that are not blown out. The bright sunlight makes this an especially difficult subject to expose. The subject speaks of chaos with differing materials, sizes, and configurations of the 3 helter-skelter wheels. From a compositional standpoint, I am wondering if it was necessary to crop the right-hand side of the wheels. If there was something next to the wheels that needed to be cropped, then the maker did the right thing in cropping off a good portion of the wheels rather than a small amount. Having said that, the bottoms of all of the wheels should be shown so we can see where they are resting. Very nice image.
This is entitled Spokes of Time by Shannon Kelly, 22 points. And Jackie says, there is a lot going on in this image. Several large pieces in front, which is making my eyes bounce around the image, looking at what is the subject. You may have been intrigued by all these interesting elements, but visually they are competing with each other. Sometimes you just have to simplify. When you subtract everything unimportant or distracting or competing with the main subject, you are helping the viewer to grasp the concept of your photo in the first couple of seconds. If I saw this scene, I would be drawn to the colored glass frame. The play of light and textures framing the nature behind would make for an interesting subject. Always aim to include as little as possible. And this is Stained Glass Memories by Christine Mudra, 20 points.
I thought this was a very nice lakeside scene, and I thought about this a lot. And the only thing that I had problems with in this image is you have a wooden structure along the bottom, and the problem is I'm not sure what that is. It's not a log or anything else. So since it's not identifiable, if it was just a log going across, that might be one thing. But this is just something that we don't know, so it distracts me. I tried cropping just above. There are two things you could do. Crop just above where those wooden structures are on the bottom, and then the scene is actually quite beautiful. You just enlarge it a little, so if you crop right above that wooden structure that has the shadow under it there as well, then you have a really nice scene. The other thing is you could also remove those in post-processing fairly easily. However, removing those in post-processing leaves you with a fair amount of the rocks and the light beach compared to the trees and the darker stones in the back. So actually cropping it right above where the upper wood structure on the bottom hits the right side of the screen, just above that, and having that as your image is actually quite pleasing because it has some of the white stones, the dark stones, and the trees. So I think it's a very good image. You just benefit by a little cropping.
And the title of this is Superior Living, Jealous, by Dan Wanhanen, and 18 points.
I believe this might be Doc, the male lion at our Cleveland Zoo. He's known for napping a lot and appears to be waking up from a nap. The image is well exposed and we get a good view of Doc's fully open mouth. The image appears to be sharp. While the exposure is good, it seems to lack contrast, possibly from an overcast day. I would try to boost the contrast a little to make it pop.
And this is The Lion Awakes by Andrew Garoy, 22 points. And Jackie says, very cool and dynamic capture. Nice selection on your depth of field. Great focus from front to back. So many strong points in this capture. Beautiful curves, contrasting colors, sense of motion, shadows, great exposure and focus. Very well done. This is nitpicky, but only a small item that perhaps you could touch up is there seems to be some light halo around the right knee of the front racer. I would just lightly burn the track a bit there. And this is entitled Three Thrill Seekers by Jordan Tetzel, 25 points, second place.
I thought this was a very interesting abstract, perhaps a ceiling or the inside of something like an umbrella. Doesn't really matter what it is. I really like the abstraction. It's very symmetric and visually pleasing. The only thing as I look that I think might work better is to have this to really accentuate the symmetry, a square crop. Because we're trying to say it's symmetric, but we're showing more of the right and left side than we are top and bottom. With a square crop with that in the middle, it would be a totally symmetric abstract. So a nice capture.
And this is entitled Yurt by Kate Hilliard, 22 points.
This is a fun image and could be seen on a photojournalism night. There's plenty of action as the woman appears to be dodging the leaping frisbee catching dog. The expressions of some of the audience add to the excitement. Two adjustments could improve the image. I would crop a little off the top, but don't get too close to the dog's ear. More importantly, the image appears to be underexposed, so I would add exposure without losing detail in the whites.
And this is entitled Caught by Victoria Young, 21 points. And Jackie says, not sure how many different exposures you have here. Looks like you were having as much fun creating this as the gamers were. The lights and colors are very exciting here. The long exposure where the people are becoming ghosted is an interesting element of the story. I do feel the left side of the image pulls me out of the frame. Maybe consider cropping off the left side of the image where the people are very out of focus and seem to be leaving the frame. The subjects on your right are out of focus, but because they are more static at their machines, it keeps you in the frame and are very interesting. And this is Cleveland Pinball Show by George Klepitz, 24 points, third place.
I thought this was a very good capture in a very difficult lighting situation. Now, the eye is drawn to the fluorescent light. Remember, we said the eye goes to the lightest thing, but there's little you can do about that. And this is the important thing, is even though we say that your eye is drawn to the brightest thing and try not to have that in the picture, when you're doing a candid like this, and this is not studio work, then there's nothing you could do about that light. That light is there. And so you work with it. If you waited a while, again, he might not have that perfect position. Try moving around. If you move to the right so that that fluorescent light was out of the picture, then you wouldn't be able to see his face. So in this case, it doesn't bother me because this is more of a candid shot. Overall, though, just the image is a little flat, and I would darken the black slightly and bring down the brightness of his hair. Darkening the blacks would increase the overall dynamic range of the image, and these are all just processing suggestions because I think the recognition of this and the capture is excellent. It's just a matter that bringing up the blacks a little, or blackening the blacks a little too, to give this more dynamic range, and it's a perfect image.
And this is entitled Dave Grinding by Ann Williams, 23 points, honorable mention.
This image has a special interest due to the perspective the maker chose. The leisure boats and their masts are in contrast with the business world of the distant city, as if to say, I'd rather be sailing than working, but right now I'm stuck working. The late afternoon sun communicates the end of the day and gives a nice overall warmth. While it probably felt this dark at the time, I think a slight boost in exposure might give the image a little more pop. I also would crop down from the top a little, but not too close to the masts or the top of the key building.
And this is entitled Edgewater by Kate Hilliard, 23 points, honorable mention. And Jackie says, interesting. I like the dark atmosphere of the capture. Seems like realistic light for this subject. You have some nicely managed highlights and shadows that help to create some dimension and interest. This looks like it might be some kind of old hotel operator system with the old rotary dial. The rotary dial with the white circle on it pulls my eyes there trying to figure it out. If that is an important item in your story, then you might want to keep if that is an important item in your story that you want to keep, I might look for a different way to compose this so it's not at the back of your image. If this item is not important to you, I would darken it by burning it in Lightroom or Photoshop. I do very much like the simple color scheme. And this is entitled Exchange by Laura Eisenberg, 23 points, honorable mention.
I felt this was a very nice image, but I would bring down the highlights on the girl's sweater, and the right side of her face also, just a little. Your eyes are immediately drawn to the sweater because of the brightness. Now, again, this is not, and you shouldn't be discouraged, because we're talking here, this is not a problem with camera settings. The camera settings are perfect. It's not that because the camera could only see a certain amount of light or dark, and a thing like this, that's how it's going to come out. But the composition is excellent. The camera settings were excellent, but because her sweater is so bright, this is just a matter of post-processing, bringing those down, bringing the right side of her face down, right side as we're looking at her, face down, and then I think it would be perfect.
And the title is Fall Bliss by Shannon Kelly, 22 points.
This image has great impact due to the spectacular sunset clouds. Appropriately, the maker maximized that by using 2/3 of the image for the sky and only 1/3 for the cars. The low angle further enhances the sky, helps to keep the cars as an important part of the image, and minimizes the tents and trailers of the car show. I would crop a little off the bottom because there's not as much interest there. With a soft brush, I would also try to lighten up the cars a little.
And this is entitled Fire Reflections by Jordan Tetzel, 23 points, honorable mention. And Jackie says, nice use of a glass ball to capture a fresh photographic perspective. Good handling of lights and darks. I like your choice of aperture. Your foreground and the orb are very sharp. Your placement of the orb is a great choice compositionally. I like the out of focus background. Nicely done. And this is entitled Golden Day by Melanie Thompson, 21 points.
I think this is a good lakeside image, but I would want to see either, and I'm referring now to the greenery in the upper left. I want to see either more of the green trees or less. Just this tiny bit seems incomplete, and you could either crop it out or show more of that. The other thing I would do is try to bring down the highlights of the rocks on the left side. Again, these are not problems, compositionally fine. The trees in the upper left, seeing more or less of those, that's a bit of composition, and you could correct that then just with a bit of cropping. But the recognition of this is nice. The camera settings are fine, but the camera, again, could only capture so much range of light to dark. So sometimes in post you have to bring them down. Another consideration is cropping down from I really like the progression of the white rocks into the water and out into the water too. That little bit in the upper left doesn't add that much, so a consideration would be to crop out actually the top part of the picture as well. But I still think I like this image because you recognize a very interesting scene.
And this is entitled My Lasting Memory by Dan Weinanen. I'm so sorry for mispronouncing your name. 20 points.
The exposure of the blooms here is good. There's a gentle feel to the image with the soft pink color contrasted with the yellow center. With a macro image like this, it's important to have either the pistils, stamens, or petals in focus. In here, none of them seem to be in sharp focus, so we don't know where to look. This may have been due to movement of the flowers, but looks more like the camera didn't achieve focus, possibly because it was too close. Try backing up more for a greater depth of field and to be assured that the camera can achieve focus, and then you can later crop to the size that you want.
This is entitled Soft Petals by Natalia Souza, 22 points. And Jackie says, interesting still life of a woodworker's tools. Beautiful textures and warmth to this image. I like the inclusion of the filings or bits of shavings. You have nice light filtering in, but find that one set of highlights in the back right distracting. You could tone that down pretty easily with the burn tool. When coming across a setup like this, where the elements all seem to be from a certain time period, I would take a few minutes to scan all the elements and ask myself, do they all fit? That bright oak stool doesn't seem to be of the same time period. An element like that could have easily been removed from the scene, then placed back when done photographing. And this is entitled Stepping Back in Time by Christine Mudra, 24 points, third place.
This one I struggled with because this is a great subject, it's a great background, and a beautiful diagonal composition. Just it goes right from bottom left to upper right. But only one thing is just really bugged me about this, and is that I would want to see all of the dog. And I'm not sure why we didn't get all of that in. We have the tail cut off, and we have right down to the bottom of the feet, but not all of it again. And somehow that just makes it this incomplete. So I think this is a perfect picture, but I would just like to see the rest of the dog.
And the title is Waiting Patiently by Andrew Garoy, 21 points. And that is our last image, and thanks to all who came to the competition and entered photos.